All right, guys, welcome back to episode 14 of the Why of It All. If you are listening, you can hear that I sound like a man, and it's just because I've been sick this whole week, but I was not going to let this sickness stop me from our guest speaker today and from being on today with you guys. It's so good to be back in the studio with everybody. So I just want to say hello, hello.
We're glad you're back
We
too, Gina.
Yes, it's so good to be back in the land of the living.
Yes, even
Um,
if you sound a little bit like a man, it's kind of hot.
it's kind of a little
Kind of deep,
sultry, right?
a little
It's a little
deep and sultry.
sultry,
I kind of like it.
but like truth though, I want my voice back. Like I want Gina back. I want
I can imagine.
so ready
I
to
can
stop
imagine.
coughing up a lung. So, disclaimer, if I mute myself for a minute, it's just because I'm having a coughing spell, but we're gonna keep pushing forward today, okay? Um, but I am so excited because we have such a special guest today. Um, we have Robin Olson here, and I just cannot say enough good things about her. She was my grief counseling coach a couple of months ago. I think we did 5 weeks together, right, Robin?
Right. Hmm.
And it was really, truly the most transformative 5 weeks in my grief journey. And so I just want to say thank you, first and foremost, for being here.
You're welcome.
And, and I am going to let Melanie take the stage right now to talk about Robin.
Yeah, Robin, I'm going to read your bio. It'll be a little bit weird while you're sitting there and I'm reading your bio to you, but this is just amazing. So, Robin Olson is a compassionate guide, seasoned coach, and dedicated advocate for healing and transformation. She brings a wealth of expertise as a certified grief counselor, grief coach, end of life doula, meditation teacher, and Reiki master, which, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to hear about that. She also calls herself a recovering accountant, which is hilarious. Robin's current day job is the Associate Director of the Area Agency on Aging, Grief Support Specialist, and End of Life Planning Coordinator. Her professional journey is deeply informed by her own personal experiences of loss and transformation, along with her commitment to helping others navigate life's most challenging transitions. As a vision-based life and grief coach, Robin specializes in supporting women over 40 who are moving through their major life changes, identity shifts, career changes, and new beginnings. Through a powerful blend of spiritual practices, meditation, and grief processing, Robin helps her clients move from confusion and overwhelm to clarity, confidence, and renewed purpose. Boy, that resonates with us, Gina, doesn't it?
Absolutely, 100%.
Whether she's working one-on-one with clients, leading workshops, or speaking to large audiences, Robin offers more than insight. She offers presence. Her work provides transformative tools for self-discovery, healing, and resilience. I'm so
Mm,
excited about this conversation. This is going to be so good. Welcome, welcome, Robin. We are so glad to have you here.
yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, and I just want to say one thing that struck me at the end of what Melanie was saying, that you offer insight and you offer presence. And I just want to say that having worked with you, as you being my grief counseling coach, your presence was so palpable. And you have this amazing gift of, I know, making me felt seen. I felt seen. And I felt like with each word that came out of my mouth, you really were listening. And I think it's a gift. I just think it's such a gift. And I just remember feeling your presence. And what more could you ask for from a friend or a counselor or a therapist? Like, anyway, it's just I just have to give you a shout out for that because that resonates with me. Um, but I want to jump right in, Robin, if it's okay to ask you a question. You describe yourself as a recovering accountant, which already hints at transformation. But can you take us back to the beginning? Like, take us back. What experiences in your past started pulling you towards this work that you do now?
First of all, thank you. Let me say thank you for having me on this show. I am an avid listener to both of you in this podcast. And you didn't tell
Oh,
me I would need Kleenex for myself because, Gina, that just brought tears to my eyes. Thank you so much.
And I just looked around. I'm like, damn it! I was gonna start crying. And where's my damn tissue? Where's my tissue?
Oops.
Oops. So I'm gonna have
And
to use my shirt.
I'm not actually crying. My eyes are just watering from allergies, but we'll just call it all
Yeah,
tears all the way
sure.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, Melanie. Sure. No.
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful testimony and introduction. And so, yeah, a recovering accountant, right? So it all began. It began in my childhood. To be honest with you, when you get to a certain age, you start looking back. I grew up in an alcoholic family with a disabled sister, and my parents were Depression era parents, and they want work was everything to them. You got to get a job, you got to go to college, you got to get a job, and you got to save and all of those things, and that was fine. And so I discovered accounting that I was really good at in high school, and so I got into University of Illinois, the business school, and I spent 2 years in it. And I'm like, I don't like this. I hate this. I don't want to be in an office, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I literally opened the program catalog, and everything but one class, statistics, transferred to education. And now I had education in my blood. I had 2 aunts that taught for 50 years. And I'm like, okay. And so I got a degree. My bachelor's is in education. So I taught for 2 years, and I absolutely loved it. But I couldn't quite get around the politics and the difficulties of the education system. And this was back in the 80s. So, and we all know
Wow.
the difficulties the education system's having now.
Yeah.
But even as a teacher back then, it just, I couldn't handle the politics. And I do attribute that to just being naive and being young and not understanding kind of how to relate to people and get things done in that way. And so what did I do? I quit teaching and I went back to accounting. I went on to get my master's degree, MBA and CPA. And and when I say I went back to what was easy for me, which accounting was easy. And I am so grateful I did that. Don't get me wrong. But in looking back, I built my career on what I was good at, but I didn't necessarily like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember as a late 20-something finishing a report and tossing it across my desk, and the words just came out of me. How is this helping humanity? I was working for a suit manufacturer doing cost
Yeah.
accounting.
Yeah.
And there was not that alignment, but I kept going on, and I made good money. I bought a house, and I got all those things that I needed.
Sure.
And so I got married, had a daughter. I was married to an Air Force officer who served in Iraq right after 9/11. And of course, we all know how that changes people.
Sure.
Yeah, we were living in Germany at the time when all that happened, and our daughter was born then. Well, we get back to the States, and a couple of years after we get back to the States, my younger sister, 2.5 years younger than me, who survived childhood leukemia and a coma from meningitis at a very early age,
Oh, wow.
was struck as a pedestrian, had a traumatic brain injury, and ended up dying. And it was
Remember
like,
that.
Wow.
why, Cheryl? Why? She survived all these other things, and now this.
Mm-hmm.
Intuitively, something told me, though, that she was a teacher. She was part of my teaching me, and there was something to be learned from that. And it really was, you have a choice, Robin, to get your life together now, because I was very unhappy. I was 8, 9 years into what wound up being a 12-year marriage to a husband who was an alcoholic by this time. The military, all of that turmoil had just built up in him. I was unhappy, yet I had the house, I had the cars, I had the 2 dogs, I had everything from the outside. And when my sister died, I really took this as, okay, time to get my life together, time to make some decisions. And I gave my husband at that time a kind of a year. We had a deep conversation. I told him, I said, look, I can handle everybody's grief, my own, raising our daughter in this, but I can't handle your drinking. That's what's got to change. And there was a time when I used to pray that nothing would happen to him around his drinking. That didn't work. Then I used to pray, will something please happen? And I know that sounds really bad, but something please happen. We've got to
Yeah.
get his attention.
Yeah.
He's got to
And
hit his rock bottom.
yeah, have him hit something so that he wakes up and wants to get help.
Yeah.
And then I realized it's got to be me. I've got to be the thing that happens
Yeah.
for my life. And then maybe he'll change, but I had to be the person that changed and took charge. And so out of my sister's death, then 2 years later, I did ask for a divorce. He ended up having a psychotic break because he quit drinking. But our divorce, went through. He was medically discharged from the Air Force with actually bipolar alcohol disorder. And then 2 years later, my father died. And so in this transition of the divorce, I had to find a job again, right? I went back into what was easy, what I knew, what I was trained in, accounting. And I found a couple of jobs that served really well. One was, I was there for over 7 years. And so my father died. I was able to be with him when he died. And then a few years later, my mother died. And when she died, we might get into that in a little bit, but the main thing I want to talk about in terms of the recovering accountant was a few months after she died, I felt this lift of expectations off my shoulders, as if, Robin, you're free now to do what you want to do. But how do you change 45, 50 years of living under your parents' expectations and what you're trained in to now do what you want to do? That's a hard process to do, right?
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
But in being with both of my parents at the end of their life, I knew that was going to be a component of it. And so my job ended at the hospital system I was working in. And although I tried to get another position with them, accounting, the universe said no. They actually took that job away. The hospital rescinded that job. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm here. I'm the vessel. I'm here for you to mold into what needs to happen. And that's when I went to meditation school. That's when I went to spiritual and life purpose coaching school, end of life doula. And I started volunteering for hospice, and I started making this transition. But the recovering part of accounting, because accounting is one thing, but using recovering with it, when we have these things, the turmoil and the things that make us uncomfortable, we go back to what we find comfort in. And there was a certain level of comfort, obviously, in being an accountant, because I knew all the skills, I had it, and I could find a job easily. And so that's the recovering part, right? I'm trying to stay away from accounting. I actually just finished a term as a treasurer for a nonprofit because I didn't want to do accounting anymore. I love the nonprofit, don't get me wrong, but I have to keep continuing walking away from the accounting to do this work more fully and be more present in this work. Yeah.
Man, you so much of what you talked about when you were recanting the story of what got you to where you are now rang so many bells for me. What really got me was when you talked about how you saw the loss of your sister as her being your teacher.
Me
And
too.
I resonate with that so much. I lost a child a little over a decade ago. And I knew pretty shortly thereafter that that's what that was all about. That this might sound strange to some people, probably Robin, you'll probably resonate very much with it. But what I heard after that loss was that he never intended to be in the body. He came through to teach me, to help guide me into becoming the greatest version of me. And that process of going through my healing journey and the grief process after that, surviving that loss, and then going on to thrive after that loss and having a child afterwards that was a perfect, beautiful, healthy baby, and all of that love that I had to give for her when you said that, I just went ding, 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 because I've always
Mhm.
looked at him as having been one of my greatest teachers, and that experience as having been one of my greatest teachers. Hard as it was.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is
Mhm.
so beautiful, Melanie. I'm so glad you shared that you heard that nudge, that
Mhm.
voice that said he was your teacher, because we get those voices and those nudges about all kinds of things and we don't pay attention.
Yeah.
And that
Mhm.
is the one thing in Reiki. You mentioned the Reiki, that whole thing.
Mhm.
Those kind of messages come through when I
Yeah.
work with people on energy, and I help them in meditation to listen to those things, because
Mhm.
there's a reason you're hearing that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And when we pay attention to that, our heart lines with our head and we get total
Mhm.
alignment of what we're supposed to do, that next step,
Yeah.
however
Beautiful.
big that is.
And one
That's
thing I noticed, I want to piggyback on that because one thing I noticed, Robin, during our coaching sessions
Mhm.
was that same thing is that I would be talking to you, explaining to you what I was feeling, and you would intuitively get these I don't know what you want to call them, like just visions or whatever. I don't want to sound too woo woo, but and you would come back to me to go, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm picking up
Yeah,
on. And literally 99% of the time, she was spot on. Like
yeah.
literally, she's like, this is what I'm hearing about everything you're saying. This is what's coming up. And then it was like, oh yeah, Robin, like you get it. Like you totally get it. And so that was another like, and I think then I would go, ah, and like cry into my handkerchief and like, bawl and everything. And then I would try to get myself together, to continue the session. But anyway,
yeah.
that's truly a gift.
I
Yeah,
love
well,
it. It's
I think we all have
yeah.
that though. I think we all
Mhm.
do, and it's just how much we cultivate and
Mhm.
practice listening to that. Yeah, I get the pictures or words in my head
Mhm.
when we're in the zone and we're in a session. That is,
Yeah.
uh, that's, I guess, just part of what I do, how I do
Yeah.
it.
I was going to ask because you brought up hospice, but like,
Mhm,
how did you get involved in hospice? Because I used to volunteer for hospice years ago. And
uh-huh.
I honestly can't remember how I made that connection and wanted to just be a volunteer, but how did you get involved in hospice? Like,
Well, yeah, it first stemmed when my father got sick,
mhm,
and we waited till right at the very end to call hospice, because that's
we
what
did too.
most people know about. It's right for the very end, and so we got him
Right.
on hospice on a Sunday, and he died on Thursday. But during
Yep.
that process, it's such a team atmosphere. I mean, it's a cohesive team, hospices are, with the nurses and the doctors, the spiritual care, the
The
social work,
chaplains,
the
the social.
chaplains,
Mhm,
the volunteers, the CNAs. It's a team effort because they meet every other week. So when my father got on hospice, now my parents were living in Las Vegas at the time. We're
mhm,
from Chicago, born and raised. The social worker that came in to in-process him had worked at a hospital that my mom was associated with. And we're just
oh,
like, oh, wow. She sat there
oh,
for 3 hours just talking. And my mom had been in the kidney dialysis, had been a unit secretary for 20 years. And it just, so that was a connection that happened,
oh,
you know,
just
divinely, or however
divinely,
you want to say it,
divinely.
universe, yeah, of
Yep.
saying, okay, here is your new world. And I so appreciated and just fell in love with that, the sacredness of it, and to be
Yeah.
there when, it's one thing, we bring children into the world, and that is a sacred event, but the
Yeah.
outgo is also a very sacred event. So
Absolutely.
that was my first introduction to hospice then.
Okay.
And so my father died at home. And then at the hospital, my mom had fallen. I flew out because I was her medical power of attorney and decision maker. And, by this time, my dad had been gone for 6 years. My sister had been gone for 10 years. My mom was really ready.
Just
She
ready.
didn't want to, and I knew that. I had to advocate for her wishes. That's a whole nother story of that week. But I got her into an inpatient hospice unit there
You
in
did.
Vegas. she passed away. And I
Oh,
knew whenever the time came, I wanted to volunteer for hospice. So when I left my accounting job in 2021, I took a month off and I really did nothing. I just read, I walked, and I kind of tried to sleep. I mean, I just tried to detox from the stress.
everything.
I was in accounting and labor management for a hospital system during COVID, which was really stressful. So and then I called a friend because I who had gone over to hospice to be a chaplain, and I said, "Hey, I want to volunteer." So I went and I talked to her, and
Okay.
that's how it got started. I got
That's how that
volunteer.
got started.
And about 3 months later, they hired me as the volunteer assistant coordinator. And then about 3 months after that, when I was studying end of life doula and becoming certified there, they asked me
Hmm.
if I wanted to be a bereavement care coordinator, which is
Oh,
following the families for the 13 months after their loved one
Oh,
died.
their
So I
loss.
was making the phone calls and doing visits and things like that. That's how I got into hospice, really to start as a volunteer. And I
Well,
just fell in love with it. Yeah.
you ran with it.
Mhm.
Ah,
Robin, as someone who is clearly energetically sensitive,
Mhm.
and I know because back in the day, I was a licensed acupuncturist, and I did. My practice was very different than most other acupuncturists because I combined acupuncture with energetic body work, and I
Mhm.
was receiving the downloads and the transmissions and guiding my practice based on what I was intuitively perceiving. And I recognize that in you. You know, how does someone who is so energetically sensitive operate in that hospice environment? And how do you trying to find the words here. How does it not weigh you down? What do you have certain practices that you do or just a different do you just operate from a different perspective? How do you keep that what can be what some people would consider a heavy environment to be in? How do you keep your energy light and how do you navigate through that?
mm,
Yeah, thank you for that question. I do get that a lot. That people say, "Oh, that's sad work. That's heavy work."
mhm.
And the two things. One, when you said you operate from a different perspective, and I think I really do.
Hmm.
At the same time, I do have my own energetic practices. So that my practices, I'm a daily meditator. I
Mhm.
now meditate 3 times a day. I just have to do that. I get up in the morning. My meditation teacher taught the RPM method, rise, pee, meditate. I mean, you just do it in the morning
Mm.
before anything starts. And you know what? I started with 3 minutes a day.
I was just
Anybody can
gonna
do that.
ask, how long are your meditations 3 times a day?
Well, now I meditate 35 to 45 minutes in the morning.
Okay.
And then I'll do a midday one of, 15 minutes, and then when I get home, it's at least 35, sometimes it's an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and
Wow,
It's
that's
like
a
you need that vibrational detox at the end, I would imagine.
I would
yeah,
think.
it is. It's like a recalibration or
Mhm.
the old cars, back in before the fuel injected, they used to have the carburetor where it had to settle down, and I can
Mm,
literally feel my body going through those stages
Mm.
of settling down.
Mhm.
Into, okay, it's all gone. The day's gone. Now I've let loose of everything that I've brought home with me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do it in the office before I even go. So I have a really strong, dedicated meditation practice. I also have, and this just recently started, I took a look at my values again, but the value I have that I hold most dearly is presence and presence with
Mm.
myself now. It's like,
Mm.
okay, when I'm fully present in what I'm engaging in, I'm focused and all of the other, the living forward and the living behind, all of those anxiety things that get us caught up, they don't exist. So I'm able to focus better, which means I don't carry a lot, right? I don't
yeah.
carry
Yeah.
a lot home. But the perspective is, and this is not popular in society. Death is not talked about. It's not
Mm-mm.
popular.
Mhm.
And yet it is when you live, you die. You die every single moment. We have skin cells that slough off by the millions, right? Because
Right?
all of our cells are dying and regenerating. Within 2 years, your
Mhm.
body's changed, or a
Mhm.
couple of years anyway. I know it takes 2 years to adjust to the altitude. I moved to 8,000 feet altitude. So, um, But everything is dying all the time. Every moment is dying.
Hmm.
Every event dies. We don't say die, but it ends,
It
right?
ends.
And
Yeah.
so my perspective is, if I can help someone at the end when they're saying goodbye, and it's not just the person, the patient, it's the family, it's the friends. If I can provide a safe space to feel through that and experience through that, I am willing to carry that. I'm willing to
Mm.
carry that because I know how to release it. And everybody deserves a death with dignity.
At the Why of It All, we are passionate about healing mind, spirit, and body. And that's why we're proud to be sponsored by a brand whose passion for wellness runs as deep as ours, Epic Minerals. Epic Minerals is a family-owned American small business that offers premium, mineral-based wellness products thoughtfully formulated with therapeutic-grade ingredients designed to support detoxification, mineral replenishment, and boost vitality from the inside out. Their product line includes Zeolite Extra, a heavy metal detox spray with humic and fulvic acids, Wellness Extra capsules, a daily immune support with 72 essential trace minerals to boost energy and optimize cellular function, and Colloidal Silver Extra, a powerful natural antimicrobial spray to protect against harmful pathogens and boost immunity. And remember, when you shop small, every purchase supports a dream and makes a real difference in the lives of a real family. Head to epicminerals.net and use our exclusive code HEAL, that's HEAL, at checkout for 10% off your order.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves that. And, when I worked in hospice, I still get those calls. I just had one last week. I'm the one that they call to work with difficult patients, the one that have the anxiety at the end or have difficulty. I would be the one to get the call at nighttime saying, "Hey, Robin, this patient is, 12 to 24 hours within death. Would you go sit with them?" And that is my niche, really, is what we call vigil, sitting vigil for the end. So to help a family understand what that body's going through of their loved one, what they're potentially experiencing, I just find so special and so sacred. And so that my perspective is, it's much different than the medical community. The medical community is meant to keep you alive, right? And
Right.
the patient I worked with last week, she's ready to go, but everybody around her wasn't. And
Yeah.
I was able to hold that space for her.
Uh,
She actually thanked me.
uh,
You know?
and I have to say, listening to you, I'm getting teary because the last 12 hours of my father's life, I was not strong enough to be a part of. I actually asked my brother to step in to be with my mom, take care for him this last 12 hours because I was scared that because we knew he was dying. The nurse came in the day before. And one of the signs, Robin, you'll know this, but he was laying in his recliner. The nurse checked the bottom of his feet, and you can see the modeling, the circulation, the blood was starting to pool.
Yeah.
So we knew it was imminent. And so I was so scared, though, that if I was going to watch him die, I was scared that your natural response is to want to call 911, like call somebody, like try to like wake him up or like help him. And I was so scared that I think I was going to create a scene instead of like let him just go peacefully, which is how he went with my mother and his firstborn, which is I felt like was just the most perfect ending for my father. But I was so scared that I was going to try to revive him, if that makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
I was scared watching him take his last breaths that I wasn't going to be able to be that beacon of strength or what I think my father needed in those last few hours. And so that is truly and there I have some regrets about that because of course I could have been there, right? I'll always probably regret maybe not being there at the very, very end, but um it's just part of life, right? You live, so it's just a beautiful uh gift that is in those last 12 to 24 hours, that that's your niche, because oh, what a precious um time that is in a person's life, because it is still part of their life, right? That's
Yeah.
their story,
Yeah.
right? Even
Yeah.
though it's coming to an end. Anyway, I love you more after having this conversation, because it just um I know what a gift that is and how special that is.
Oh, thank you, Gina. Can I just take a moment for you and honor you and take a deep breath? Yeah, I know it's not easy. But what I believe is we all do the best we can at the time, and that's something that
Mhm.
I coach around to accept. We can't
Yeah,
change the past. And I think we talked about this. We can't
we
change the past. We can only
yep.
work with now, and you can accept it. And that, you know, I think we're going to get into this. You wanted that I have developed a method to help people through that. And A is the letter for accept.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy. It's not always
Mm-mm.
easy. But as you work through grief, it does lessen. It does get easier.
Mm.
But
Yes.
thank you for your recognition. Yeah,
It's
it's hard to watch someone you love, do
oh
that
yeah. Oh,
for
it's
sure.
it's life changing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but um, but I want to lighten things up just a little bit, so I don't like cry all my makeup off, because I feel like that's I could go down that hole. So let's not do that. But like it's like so many people think grief only shows up after death, but you teach something much more expansive. So can you tell us, like, how do you define grief, and what are some of the non-death losses we often overlook?
Sure, sure. And if I could, let me tell a little story about how I came upon this. And it was just a
Please.
couple of years ago. So I'm a big vision board person. And in January of 2022, I created this vision board because I had left my job and I was recreating myself. And I did it very intentionally of what I wanted to do. And I put a space for Colorado and a space for my meditation and coaching and health and eating, and down at the bottom I had two people older in life saying love at any age, and I did this big vision board. And about 6 months later I came to vacation to Colorado because I knew I wanted to come here, had dinner with a guy I went to high school with,
Mm.
and one thing led to another, fell in love. 6 months later I moved to Colorado, we get married, and
Uh,
here I am living the dream, right here I am living my vision board.
Oh my
And
God.
uh,
so it was just a couple of years ago in April, I was walking down the street. I can see the mountains. I've got a job. I've got my wonderful partner. And this wave of sadness came over me.
mm.
And I'm
Interesting.
walking and I'm like, what's going on? I have nothing to be sad about. And the more I walked, I started getting frustrated, and then I started getting angry, and I literally stopped at the street and I'm like, I can't take this home. I can't take this home to my partner because we're still, we're getting used to each other in this. And I'm like, what is going on? And much like you said, Melanie, you heard the voice, the words. I heard, Robin, it's grief. And I'm like,
Oh,
grief? What do you mean grief?
yeah.
And I got to thinking, well, I lived in the place I had moved for 17 years. That was the longest I'd lived anywhere outside of the house I grew up in. I
Mm.
left my job, I left my friends, I left my coffee shop, I left my trails that I used to walk, I left my
Yeah,
house with a big backyard and a deck, and I left all of these things. I lost all of these things.
you
Now,
did.
obviously, I wouldn't give up what I have now to go back, but that is where it struck me, because then and by this time I was already studying thanatology and getting more into death and dying and grief, and the only definitions that were coming up were deep sorrow, usually caused by the death of a loved one. And I'm like, that
Mm.
just doesn't fit what you're telling me. I've got
Mm.
grief.
Right.
And so as I kept doing research, I found a couple of definitions that really resonated. And one was from the grief recovery method. And it is conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in familiar patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that's it. Favorite everything is what I left. And now I've got to find new things. So and I think about this in terms of people in addictions, right? When people try to change, I mean, think about if you've ever tried to change your eating to lose weight,
Oh,
or change, you're stepping out of that that comfort zone. And
Yeah.
that's a loss. And that's really needs to be honored because you're making a change and a transition in your life. And the other definition has to do with a reduction in a person's resources, whether that's personal, material, or symbolic, to which you're emotionally attached. So you're bringing in emotions and your attachment to something, whether it's a car, whether it's your favorite blanket, whether it is your skills and your knowledge. If you get sick and you can't do the work you used to do, those are losses. So
Yes.
non-death losses are those invisible things that we lose that are harder to name, harder to validate, and harder to support, but they're there.
Yeah.
And that is now what I center my practice around, because then one of the things when I was in thanatology, my certification, is we did a timeline of loss. And it was all the major events, not only death. And you know what? Divorce was a huge loss. And what came with that? I just did a talk last week to our Behavioral Health Coalition about my husband's psychotic break. And I had the people in the audience go, okay, my husband's lost, my loss, our daughter. What are we losing when this family and this marriage is breaking up that you can't see, but you're helping support through what you do, first
Yes.
responders in that. And so when I work with women who are going through and they say, I want a new career, I want to change, or I've had this death. What else is going on? What other losses have you not recognized? Because there's something called disenfranchised grief. And
Mm.
those are the losses we don't get to process.
Oh,
Because
wow.
one, they're not society's accepted way of acceptive reason for grief and reason for
Interesting.
feeling sadness, or we
Yeah.
don't know it's a loss. And so we don't process it till much later. And one of those losses was my sister. When she got sick as a 4-year-old, I was 7. My entire life changed on that when she got sick.
Of
My
course.
whole family dynamic changed. I've done a lot of therapy around that change, and it still comes up in my blog posts of that time, and I'm still processing, trying to get back to that happy little girl. Well, I still got that little girl inside of me,
Yep.
and so those changes that happened in my family, that was a loss. So yeah, coaching around that, it's really eye-opening for people when they realize, oh yeah, that happened. And I still feel angry about it. Okay, let's talk about it.
Yes.
Gina and I, just a few weeks ago, episode 12, I think, was it? We called Letting Go of the Fear of Letting Go.
Mhm.
And it was essentially what you're talking about is,
Yes.
in this case, what is bringing up for me is from what you're talking about is grieving the loss of identities.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And, the
Yes.
examples that Gina and I were talking about was career changes, for example, grieving the loss of that old identity of what you do. Things that were coming up for me was going from full-time stay-at-home mom when my daughter was very small to when she finally got big enough to go to school. And then there's 8 hours a day. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, who am I now with this 8 hours a
What?
day? I'm not a full-time, focused on my kid all day long, every day mom anymore. I'm still mom. And when she comes home, I'm still mom. But I had to go through an identity loss at that point. And in my head, I'm thinking, what is my purpose now? Who am I? And what am my purpose if I'm not full-time stay-at-home mom all the time? That was
Yeah.
a whole grieving process. And it brought up for me purpose. I don't know what my purpose is anymore. And there's
Mhm.
a whole bunch of stuff attached to that.
Exactly.
I
can
totally
say
see what you're talking about.
I will admit I wandered around the house when my daughter went off to college. I'm like,
Did
what am I
you?
doing? I'm making dinner for one again. I'm not, it
I
is. Yeah,
know.
it is. It's trying to find your new purpose and what you really
Yes.
want to do, because it's coming back to you, right? You
Yeah.
don't have
Mhm.
to, and I'm saying have to, but that the opportunity to nurture your child is in a different format now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what am I going to do with
Yes.
myself? What am I going to
Yeah.
do with myself?
And
Yeah.
and I have to say, I'm going through the same thing right now, having a teenager, a 14-year-old that is 14, about to go to high school. And I think God does this. I think He prepares you for them going into adulthood, right? So He slowly starts diminishing the things you have to do for them, right? Like you're saying, Melanie, like you 8 to 5, she was at school. Well, and now mine is not only in school, but he wants to be with his buddies on the weekends. He doesn't want to be sitting with mom. He wants to be on his skateboard, hanging out. And so I have so much more time to myself, which is a blessing, right? Like I know some people in my shoes, like, girl, be grateful that you don't have 5 kids around you screaming and hollering. But it's like yeah, I'm also going through that process just in a different way because I'm losing him. I'm losing him, but I'm just saying with his growing up, there's a loss of him needing me less. And who am I? And what do I want to do in 4 years from now when he graduates high school and he's out of the house? Like, who am I? Right? My identity. I'm not just a mom.
Mhm.
Now I'm a podcaster and now you know, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter. Anyway, it's along the same line. So I think we all resonate with those non-death losses, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Robin, I know that you've talked about in the past something that you call grief glasses. Can you tell us what that
Yeah.
is? What is that? What does that
What
refer
is
to?
that?
Yeah, well, it goes back to those things that affect us deeply that we never process and fully experience and move through and take the lesson from.
Hmm.
Every event that happens to us, we now have a different perspective, a filter. And when we have a deep experience where there is a loss, for a while, we can be very timid about making decisions or about getting involved in relationship. You think of your first breakup with the guy you thought was going to be it, right?
Oh
You don't
yeah.
want anybody else. And then so we all wear grief glasses to a certain degree that filter our decisions of going forward in life. There's something called
Oh,
assumptive
interesting.
world, and it's how we operate through our expectations and our beliefs and our societal, cultural values and norms. And we make assumptions about our world. And
Mm.
the biggest thing I can think of is when 9/11 happened, right? The rug was pulled out underneath us, and all of our assumptions about safety and being what it means to be an American and
Oh
those
yeah.
types of things, we had to redefine for ourselves, both as a country and individually. And grief classes pertains with, okay, we've gone through change, we're going through change, we have these emotions, these very strong emotions, and I don't if from my perspective, I kept going through the same thing over and over again, and I'm like, "I don't wanna do this anymore."
Yeah.
Right? Let's take a
Yep.
look at what's going on, and
Yep.
and a lot of times it has to do with processing grief, and so grief classes are those things we wear, and we can choose when we take them on and off to help
Mm.
to see have more clarity and have
Yeah.
more confidence in how we wanna move forward in life and
I
experience life,
love
find
that.
that joy, take those chances, to find the joy. And in taking off our grief glasses, I have found a lot of gratitude because you're in the
Mm.
present moment, you accept it, and you can have gratitude for all of those things, whether you liked them or not. But
Yeah.
all of those things make you who you are now. And the more we can accept that and find gratitude, I think the better we can move forward in taking chances to be what we want to be, find and have those experiences that are outside of our comfort zone, and to give back to other people, you know.
I
Absolutely.
love I love that. I just love that.
Yeah.
So we've heard that you mention well, we've heard you mention like in your bio, the
Mhm.
READ method, like READ method. What can you tell
Yeah.
us? Go into that because that's the first time Melanie and I ever heard about this method. So can you explain to our listeners what is the READ method?
Certainly, certainly. And it came after that experience of walking down the street and having that wave of sadness. So the read method is a way to not only look at what's going on, but to do something about it. So R stands for recognize.
Okay.
Recognize the emotion that's coming over you. Take a moment to say, hey, I'm feeling this way. Uh, what is it? To name what's going on inside of you. And for me in that time, it was sadness, right? This
Okay.
wave of
Yeah.
sadness. So I
Yeah.
stopped and I recognized what was going on.
Okay.
The E stands for educate, and it's educate yourself and about your world. What's going on around you where this feeling may have come from. And
Okay.
so when I work with clients, the first thing I do is have them do a timeline, whether it's the past day or week or whatever, to help them identify the events that's causing this feeling. And it could be with a family member. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be something going on with you, but it's things that are going on. And the A stands for, well, it first stood for acknowledge, but I've changed it to acceptance with the option to go back to acknowledge, because accepting what is happening to you can be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So if people
That's
have a difficulty accepting the event that's causing it and that they have to do something about it, then we just move to acknowledge it. Can you say, hey, it's there and I'll get to you when I can.
Mhm.
But acceptance of where you are helps then with the D. And D stands for dialogue, or it's the doing part. So the first three have
Okay.
to be more about being present to what's going on. And the
Yeah.
D is dialoguing or doing something about it. And the doing something may be going for a walk in nature, maybe
Mm.
phoning a friend.
Mhm.
It may be becoming very
Journaling.
mindful. Pardon?
Journaling. Could that be a
Journaling.
D?
Journaling, washing dishes, going for a drive. Sometimes when we do these things where we take our mind off and we have to focus on something else, clarity comes in about another issue or about another thing you've been working on. And so it's all about allowing yourself space, allowing yourself grace
Mm.
to get clarity on the event and how you feel about it and process through it. And out of that read
Yeah.
has come another acronym for grief.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Uh,
can I share that?
please,
Yeah.
because that was like
Yeah.
you're guiding. That was our next question. So
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
please, please.
I love this one. So, and the read
Yeah.
method can be used with anything. It doesn't have to be grief. It can be used if you want to do a project, right? Sit in. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that. But I use these two acronyms in tandem. So grief, and this is one of those middle of night things that I woke up going, okay. Gratitude, radically inviting you to explore further.
Uh,
Mm.
So it's finding
that's so
gratitude from
good.
within grief. And that's not to say
Mm.
you have to be grateful for the person, the event that happened. No, it can be just
Right.
like, oh my gosh, the sun is out today
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for it. Gratitude is like a waterfall. It's like once that first drip starts going, the next and the next and the next and the next
Yeah.
comes, and you move through. And that's what one of the coaching programs, the grief coaching, from grief to gratitude, and we move
Yeah.
Yeah.
through steps to get to gratitude.
Well, it's like I love it because it's like you're taking the word grief, which for a lot of people has a negative connotation to it.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's like you're completely flipping the script to making an acronym into something super beautiful and positive. I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
beautiful way to look at grief, really. It completely shifts the way that you look at that word and how you look at grief in general.
Well, thank you. I
So
can't really take credit. I think it just came through me. That was total
Mhm.
divine inspiration, just a
I'm going to give
channeling.
you
But
credit.
when it hit me, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. So I've made bookmarks. I've got it up in my office, and I use it with my clients for sure.
I love
Yeah,
that. And
now,
gratitude, we all know, it's such an incredibly powerful energy to be in. Every moment that you're in a state of gratitude, you're not in fear. You're not in
Mhm.
anger. You're not in any of the other lower vibrational emotions
so
that you could
true.
be in. And anything that we can do to remain in a state of gratitude for as long as possible is incredibly powerful in supporting us in our healing journey.
Yeah, and did you know gratitude actually has been scientifically proven to help with sleep and lower your blood pressure?
I
I
love it.
believe that.
Yeah, there's a
I
study
believe
done
that.
in the Netherlands. If you, and especially if you write it down, if you keep a written one, it can lower the bottom number of your blood pressure.
Wow.
has a physical effect on you. And I do a gratitude kind of checklist every night. And when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll do it again and find I wake up in the morning. It can get you back to sleep when you do that. So I
I
Oh,
just,
love
for
that.
anybody listening, if you're having trouble sleeping, just do a mental gratitude list and you will fall asleep. It's
I
amazing.
love that. I
I
love
love
that.
that too.
So we're getting close to our time here.
Yeah.
But we have a few more questions that Gina and I really, really love that we want to run past you. And the first one is, what is one truth about grief that if you feel like if more people just understood it, would transform the way that we relate to ourselves and to each other? Just something about grief itself that maybe is a common misunderstanding or something that keeps people stuck.
Yeah, there are so many myths about grief.
Hmm.
And I don't know if I can limit it to just one truth, but the truth is that really change can cause grief. And
Hmm.
if we are not open to change and we are so attached to the way things are supposed to be or the way things used to be, that causes grief and causes those emotions. And so when you understand what's going on in your world, in
Hmm.
yourself and your emotions, and you work through those, everything's going to flow better for you. Your relationships in particular, because when you know yourself better, you can understand people better. You can
Yeah.
have that greater empathy and compassion and hold space for them. And relationships will just flourish when you allow yourself to process that grief and that change because you're understanding what's going on inside you. I think that's the biggest truth that I've found. It's helped
Okay.
me so much. Yeah.
Wow.
I love that, and I resonate with that. And Robin, like for everybody listening today, if you had one piece of advice for anyone who is currently going through the thick of their own grief process currently, and I know it's probably you probably have a long list, but if you could give one piece of advice for anyone who's really struggling with grief, what would you say to them today?
I would say that grief is not passive. It's an active thing that we have to engage with, and that it changes. We just talked about change, right? Change can cause grief. Well,
Yeah.
the change of grief can get you out of it as well.
Mm,
It is an active participation to move through it. And that can look like so many different ways. It can be what
Yeah.
you need to do to move through it. But it's not, with the myths surrounding, oh, it takes a year or oh, it takes 5 years. No, there's no timeline on grief. Absolutely none.
it's
It
really
may
not.
lessen in intensity, and that's what it will happen when you work through it. It will lessen, but grief will always be there to some extent. So the biggest lesson is it will change, but you have to engage with it. And
Hmm.
it will only create good results when you do that. And
Hmm.
it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. All three
Yeah,
of us know it is
no,
not easy.
it's not easy.
But it's something that to heal and to come out from underneath the intensity, we have to engage with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I can attest to that fact personally. When we went through our process of losing our first child, we survived that and moved through that process with grace, I believe 100% because we were intentional about our
Mhm.
grieving journey. It
Yeah.
was from the
Yep.
very first moment we decided we can either let this bring us down or
Yep.
we can be intentional about moving through this process and and allowing ourselves to feel the feelings, but recognizing in
Hmm.
each moment the process that we were in and using tools and processes to make our way through it, however long it would take. And we
Right.
did. And I can sit
Hmm.
here having this conversation with you, thinking all the thoughts in my head about my own grieving things that I've been through in the past with
Hmm.
no emotional reaction to it
Mhm.
because I
Hmm.
feel I have genuinely healed those parts of myself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I can look
Robin,
back at my experiences and not have as strong of a reaction, Robin, like you were saying. Like I still feel the feels, but
Yeah.
I don't go as it's not as intense. Like you said, they do it for me, it started to get the grief has started to get less intense over time. And I feel like
Mhm.
working with you helped me really um realize that, and to also give myself grace in how long that process was taking. But it
Mhm.
took a little more of the sting out of it, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, because you engaged with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no doubt you both have gratitude and appreciation for the journey as well. That helps. That
Absolutely.
comes later, but yeah, yeah.
Ew.
So how can people find you and follow your work, Robin?
Yes.
Well, I have my own website. It is, I'm in the process of changing it to Peace Within Coaching. That's my overall business name, but it's
Okay.
robinolsoncoaching.com. Okay,
Perfect.
robinolsoncoaching.com. Yes. You can book a call and we'll talk to find out what your needs are, because I do meditation teaching as well as grief and then the vision life. Just several options there. And I'm on Instagram, peace, the number 4, your mind. So peace, the number 4 in your mind. And those are my 2 main
Perfect.
things, and LinkedIn too, under Robin Olson. So yeah,
Perfect.
You're
And
right.
we will include those ways to connect with you on the show notes. So
wonderful.
listeners, if you didn't get that right away, we'll have it in the show notes. So please, we want you to be able to find Robin. We want you to be able to, find her if you need some help with this.
It's important to remember that we don't have to move through these processes alone. There are people out there like Robin
Hmm.
who are there to support and guide and help
Hmm.
uh, hold our heads above water when we need it, because sometimes we do need
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
everyone, we hope that you have enjoyed this episode. We certainly have, Robin. It was a pleasure to meet with you and have this conversation. If
True
you guys have
pleasure.
enjoyed this conversation, give us a like, give us a follow, hit the little button on whatever platform you're on. The very
Mhm.
best way to help support this show is to share it with your friends and family, especially
Mhm.
anyone you know who is going through their own grief journey and might be able to get some support and benefit from this episode, and know that if anything else, that they're not alone, you
Right.
know?
Mhm.
So
Right.
we
Mhm.
love you guys,
Mhm.
and we
Thank
hope you'll join
you.
us for the next one. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.